Everybody, it's Dr. Mark. How you doing? I am excited to talk to you here from Ibiza, as they say in Spain, and I'm sharing an incredible bit of information with you today about something that I feel very passionate about, which is something that's probably the most important determinant of our health, and it's really, really important. And it's what we call structural violence, or what are the social, economic, and political conditions that drive disease. I came back from Haiti after the earthquake, 10 years plus ago, and realized that, it was the structural violence that was driving chronic disease, not just infectious disease, as Paul Farmer figured out in Haiti, where the environment was so bad it was hard to treat TB and AIDS. But he figured it out using the power of community, and in the same way that the structural inequities cause infectious disease, they also cause chronic disease. In fact, most of our chronic diseases are caused by these structural inequities. And I'm so excited because somebody finally wrote an amazing book about it, so I don't have to. Raj Patel and Dr. Rupa Maria, who is going to be joining me any second now for an Instagram Live. And I'll just tell a little bit about her, and then everybody around will get into it. She's a physician, activist, a mother, composer. She's a musician. She has a band, travel over the world playing music. But more importantly, she's really committed to looking at the impact of social systems on our health, and also, helping indigenous communities around the country, such as the Lakota people with their clinic that they're doing. She's created something called the No Harm Coalition, and she's just an incredible physician. And I'm so excited to have her here. And let's get her on. I'm going to get her on. Hold on. Here we go. Wave to you. Oh, I waved. I need to invite you. So hold on. There we go. So I'm sending the invitation now. So you should get the invitation, and then when you see it, just join. This book is fantastic. It's called Inflamed. The subtitle is Deep Medicine and the Anatomy of Injustice. I think there's a lot to unpack there. What is deep medicine? What is the anatomy of injustice? And why do they call it inflamed? It turns out that pretty much every chronic illness is a disease of inflammation, not just autoimmune or infectious disease. So I'm super excited to have Rupa. Rupa, all you have to do is push the little plus sign, send an invitation, or accept the invitation that I send you. I will send it again and see if you get it, and it should pop up. And text me if you don't get it, because I have your on text right now. Hopefully you're going to see it. Okay, come on, Rupa, you got this. I know you do. All right. Let's see. Oh, there we go. There we go. You see?
Hello.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Hi. Good.
Hello. We did it. Okay,
Yay.
welcome.
Thank you for having me.
All
How's it
right,
over
so
there?
great to see you. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's really beautiful. You want to see? Everybody,
Yeah.
don't feel too bad. It's pretty nice. Ready? There you go. Pretty nice.
God.
Sunset, sun is coming down. It's beautiful. It's not so bad. I'm teaching a workshop here called Growing a New Body, with combining shamanic healing with functional medicine, taking people on a really deep dive experience of their health. And it's just really fantastic. So
Well,
it's great.
wonderful. We could add a new social body to that and a new political body so that we could support greater transformative health.
Absolutely. So you're coming all fuzzy. Am I fuzzy, or am I clear?
You're clear. Hi, Fuzzy.
So yeah, I don't know if you've got a good Wi-Fi or a good connection.
It's got 4 bars of 4G, so I think that's as good as we got
Oh,
here.
4G. Yeah, 4G is not very good. Do you have Wi-Fi?
I can try. Let me see.
Yeah. And then I want to talk about your book. So I did a podcast with Rupa and her co-author, Raj Patel, who wrote many books, Stuffed and Starved, which is one of my favorite, about the food system. And I used it a lot in my book, Food Fix. And I find it's really a powerful map of the entire food system, what's wrong with it, and how to fix it. Are you on Wi-Fi now?
I'm on Wi-Fi. Any better?
Oh, someone says wipe your camera eye. Maybe it's a camera.
Let Here we go.
Okay. Well, I think I can see. It just seems a little choppy. I hope everybody can see. Um, the name of the book is Inflamed: Deep Medicine and the Anatomy of Injustice. So Rupa, let's get into it. Oh, there it is. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's sort of like a great book that kind of goes along with my book Food Fix, because it talks about not only the sort of the range of things that I talk about in Food Fix, but also a deeper dive into the structural and the social determinants of health, and how much disease is really driven by trauma and by injustice and by inequities and by things that we don't really think about. And one of the things that I read years ago was a study that was published that looked at what are the major cause of death. And you think it's smoking, it's obesity, it's whatever, heart disease. The thing that was the most correlated was a lack of locus of control. In other words, a sense of being disempowered in your life. And so people who have jobs they hate, or who have bosses they hate, or who are feeling powerless, it turns out that feeling of being powerless and not an agency with yourself is one of the biggest determinants of death. And that's really a lot of what your book is about. So can you tell us what inspired you to write the book, and how did you make the connection between all the stuff we learned in medical school, because Rupa's a regular doctor, which we didn't really learn about social stuff. We're like, okay, this is the disease, this is the drug, this is what you do. And there was no context, right? How did you come to put the dots together and imagine a different story?
Really the melding of minds with Raj Patel. And what's so beautiful about our book Inflamed, is that neither of us could have written it on our own. And my understanding of disease really was influenced by 20 years of being on the road as a musician, who would these hot spots where I could witness the impact of society on disease. And what I started to notice, especially when you travel as a musician, people let you into their homes, into their communities, and they talk with you in ways that I've never been talked to as a doctor. Very different experience.
Wow.
So, different places, you'd see how different communities were impacted by inflammatory disease. And what we saw was that the more oppressed we were witnessing, the more groups were in diseases. Raj and I started looking at them. I used to call it a colonial syndrome. I noticed that people who were suffering under
Hey Rupa, did you switch to Wi-Fi? Whatever we're on now is a little worse, I think.
Right.
Whatever are you on Wi-Fi or the 4G? Oh, I'm sorry, guys, but hopefully it'll be better. Yeah, okay. But keep going. So you were in people's homes, and you were seeing what's going on in a different way. They were talking to you like they never talked to you about.
And so what we started to notice was what we started to call a colonized syndrome, that people who were impacted by colonialism were suffering these diseases at more intense rates, with more intensity. So that started the investigation about 15 years ago. And as we've gone on in the last 3 years, Raj and I brought our worlds together to look more carefully at this.
Yeah. So what are the things that you found when you began to look at disease and the social systems that we live in, the environment that we live in, the communities that we live in? What was the sort of striking findings that you had?
Most striking finding was that health can no longer we can no longer continue to pretend that health is a pursuit of individuals, that we are hopelessly and wonderfully interconnected to all the living systems and relationships around us that support either our health or promote our sickness. And so to act as individuals in pursuit of health is eventually futile, as we can see right now with climate collapse and pandemic, these things coming together in the ways that they are. The understanding we had in Western level problems that we're seeing. So health must be perceived as a systems-based phenomenon, as simply in addition to what we do with our individuals and helping individuals. And so this work, really fuses our understanding from frontline communities, from the activism that both Raj and I are engaged in. Raj does a lot of food systems work. I do a lot of work around racism and state violence. And then our work as, at least my work as a caregiver in a hospital at UCSF.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so powerful, and I always say that you cannot cure diabetes in your office as a doctor, right? It's cured in the community. It's cured in the farm, in the soil, actually, in the grocery store, in the restaurants, in the kitchen. That's where diabetes is cured. And so, right now we have a medical system that is so misguided and so addressing the wrong end of the stick, and so addressing the downstream causes of the upstream social phenomena that we're not addressing, which is kind of a bummer. So what are the effects of this type of social disruption and social inequities on health? What are the things we're finding? And talk about inflammation, because from a functional medicine perspective, inflammation is one of the core things that causes all disease. And it's one of the common denominators, not only the physiological inflammation, but the sort of social inflammation that we're seeing now, the divisiveness, the chaos, the conflict, all are often mediated by the same factors that are causing biological inflammation.
Yes, that's what we write in the book. We look at how colonial capitalism has impacted our bodies, our planets, and our planet and our societies, and how that social structure that has been around for 600 years has driven this wave of inflammation that's only getting worse. And so what we look at is how the exposures, the sum of exposures over a lifetime, and even intergenerationally, prime the immune system for like a hyper-inflammatory response in the face of damage, or in the face of the threat of damage. So our immune systems are basically toned to have this inflamed response. And we see this with more socially oppressed, with an insult like COVID, are having a more profound response. So it's sort of like a tuning, like turning a guitar string. If it's turned too taut. And so then when you pluck it, the sound, it's just not vibrating the right way. And so that's where I think functional medicine has been very helpful in identifying the systems around the body that are making people sick. And so my job as a doctor, I can give insulin all day long. But if I really want to make a dent at diabetes, I have to start working upstream on those structures and, dismantle the industrial food system and start working with communities to grow our food and revitalize our soil microbiology, which is what we're doing on the coast with the Deep Medicine Circle.
Yeah. Well, it's so true. Our diet is one of the biggest drivers of inflammation in our processed American diet. And it's more affecting indigenous cultures and African American, Hispanic cultures. But what's really interesting is that it's not only diet that causes inflammation, and I'm sure you discovered this in your work, is that social stress causes inflammation, social conflict causes inflammation. And we know now we can literally, even if you're interacting with another human being, that you can turn on their anti-inflammatory genes by interacting in a loving way. But if you are in conflict with them, you're turning on inflammatory genes. So you literally can regulate inflammation based on the social environment that you're in. And when you think of the kind of stress that people have, poverty, unemployment, just trauma, violence, sexual abuse. I mean, it's staggering. And all that registers in the body as inflammation. So it's really important to not just address diet and lifestyle, but also these social structures.
Absolutely.
What have you found about that?
Only address diet and lifestyle. We're continuing the framework that has been dysfunctional in Western medicine, in that we believe somehow the individual is separate from society, that kind of Cartesian problem that has permeated every aspect of Western science and medicine. And so it's like gaslighting the victim, right? So it's like, oh, if you just fix your diet and your lifestyle, you should be better. When you've got racist police violence, let's say in Black communities here in Oakland, you've got air pollution, you've got no access to healthy whole foods, you have no access to economic opportunity, that chronic social defeat that you were just describing. All of these things become drivers of inflammatory process. So it's no wonder that people are suffering, especially Black folks in East Oakland, from worse outcomes of inflammatory disease. Their lifespans are 10 years shorter than people who live 6 miles away in the affluent neighborhood of Piedmont. And that's not simply just a function of having more money, although that helps. It's the combination of all these toxic things. So I think that if we are addressing diet and lifestyle without addressing the social structures, we are damning our patients to this victim, like blame the victim mindset. that, if you just eat healthier and you live better, you'll be fine. And that's not true. That's why we all need to get involved in creating a healthy society for everybody.
Yeah, it's a big task. So what are the conclusions you came to around how we move from inflamed and from a society of massive injustice toward a more anti-inflammatory, both physical and psychological world to live in?
Well, part of it is what we're calling deep medicine, which is to restructure how we think of medicine, which is never separate from the context, never separate and dissect it, individuals away from the context in which they're found, and to work together on that context, create greater robust economies, more regenerative economies, greater health in our agricultural systems, redistributing power and wealth and resources to people from whom it was stolen, from the global north to the global south. So all of these things require bolder, broader visions of dismantling the architectures that have been put in place through colonial capitalism. And that's something that we can all do together. And actually, we can only do it together. That's the work of decolonizing. And it's happening right now all over the world, which is very exciting.
So give us some examples of hope, because it's been a kind of a depressing year or two of where
Well,
we see pockets of innovation, change, and hope, and moving towards a more anti-inflammatory life.
occupied, there's land going back to indigenous. There's reawakening their food ways, medicine ways, and also understanding how the indigenous people of California knew how to work with fire medicine so that we weren't all, people and animals weren't all choking from the huge erratic fire behavior that we're seeing now. So it's bringing those systems of knowledge and those people with those systems back into positions of sovereignty and power where we are. It's empowering Black and brown farmers to really lead as our primary health providers, because our health starts in the soil, and it should start by uplifting those people who have been robbed of their places, healthy food systems. So that work is happening right now, and it's very exciting. And it's a great time for us all to support that and to start working to move it into policy. I would love to see farmers really uplifted as our first healthcare providers and employed and treated like financially remunerated for their stewardship of the soil, of the water, and of our health. So that kind of work is something very easy we can do and we should do right now.
Well, that's really quite amazing, Rupa, what you're working on, and the insights around agriculture and soil and health, and healthcare starting on the farm. It sounds like a pretty radical idea. I've been talking about, but there's a few of us doctors out there talking about agriculture and healthcare, but not too many, And Daphne Miller is one of them, and I think there's a few others. Zach Bush talks a little bit about it, but there's such a need to just bridges to understand the spectrum of health. You can't, like you said, you can't decontextualize health, and you can't ignore the context in which people live. It's like I just there was a great story of that I heard up in the upper East Harlem. Went to Mount Sinai, where they had a clinic there. They were looking at how to deal with chronic disease and some of these social inequities. And they had this patient that kept coming back and back and back in the hospital with heart failure. And they kept telling him, well, do this, weigh yourself, take these medications, eat these foods, don't eat those foods. And he just kept coming back. And so somebody had the bright idea one day to go to his house. And they went to his house, and they opened the cupboards, and they saw all the crap that was in there. He had no idea how to cook. He had no idea how to provide food for himself. He didn't have the basic skills. He didn't have the knowledge. And he needed a different approach. And unless you get into the homes, I think if we created a community health workers that went around, millions of them went around to everybody in America and taught them how to make and eat real food, how to have little gardens in their backyard, and how to do the basic self-care things that we never learned, it would go a long way to empowering people to change. And it's possible.
I just want to put the blue sky between myself and Zach Bush, and also Daphne, because their analysis doesn't include any mention of power or history, which is why we're suffering the that we're seeing, that colonial capitalism was exported from Europe, and it involved the genocide of the indigenous people and their knowledge ways. It also involved the stealing of land and of labor from Africa. And so those things actually have import in our food system today. The people who are closest to the earth right now are people who are largely indigenous from Central America. So when we're talking about healing our land and healing our farming, we're not talking about, white privileged people going to the farmer's market. We're talking about starting with the people who are most harmed and abused by that system going first, and starting by restructuring the power system so that those people who've been most harmed can be healed. And then we start from there and we work our way up. So it really is starting from, the injuries that are in the soil. The soil here has memory of what happened on this land, of the genocide of the indigenous people. So it's a beautiful time to be reawakening our consciousness and start to work to repair those things. This is also not about just an individual mandate to learn to farm, even though that's what I'm doing right now. And I think that most of my med students are thrilled to be doing that work. This is about a mandate of partnering with knowledge keepers, indigenous knowledge keepers, different knowledge keepers in advancing new models of health. And not trying to sell people, a pill, because, for example, the gut microbiome is a living reflection of healthy relationships. It's not something you can just steal. I know that people right now trying to get the microbiota of Yanomami people in the Amazon to make commercial products, to say hey, they don't have inflammatory. Here, paleo poop, and sequence it and give it to people. And that just shows the misunderstanding again of modern medicine, that you can have an individualized therapeutic solution when the problem is systemic. We need to re-enter proper relationship to the way to each other. And that's something I don't hear Daphne or Zach talking about from the perspective of how supremacist ideologies have injured people around the world for 600 years. And so that is that's what we're trying to correct in this book, is offering the whole picture. It's not just, one or two pieces. It's what's the whole picture, and how do we re-enter better relationships together, which I know we can.
I think that's so key. I think what you said is so important, because, functional medicine is an attempt to zoom out and see how the entire system works, the ecosystem of your biology, which is connected to the larger ecosystem in which we live, and the planet. And what you're suggesting is that we can't just sit in our offices and see patients and hope for the best, that we have to look back and go, why is there disease in the first place? And it's not because, people are just not exercising and eating better. There's these massive structural things going on in our society here and globally where it keep people sick and keep people inflamed. And so the opportunity now is for us to sort of reimagine medicine, including the big picture of everything from soil to social justice to the food system to all of it. And I just think your book is so important. I think it's one of the most important books written in the last decade, other than mine, of course. I like food picks. Nobody read it. You all should read it. If you haven't read it, it's good. It's not one of my most popular books, but it really, I felt like I had to write it because I wanted to talk about these issues that you talked about. And it's so important. Everybody should get a copy. It's called Inflamed: Deep Medicine and the Anatomy of Injustice by Rupa Mari and Raj Patel. It's available now, and I encourage you to check it out because it will blow your mind. And it'll also give you ideas about how to get involved, what to do, how to be part of this, and how to create the change that we all want to see. So, Rupa, thank you, and thank you, Raj, for doing the book and being so awesome. I can't wait to actually meet you in person one of these days and hang out and have some whatever food we're going to eat. Maybe go to the farm and plant some things. So, really great to have you, Rupa, and we'll see you soon. Thanks all for joining.